6 armed police officers wearing bulletproof vests stormed my apartment. I was frisked despite being in bed. This was the experience of share trader Gabriel Bernard after notifying corporate regulators about an alleged fraud in the financial markets. Gabriel Bernard's experience as a whistleblower arose in testimony before the Senate last week. Hearings are ongoing. Not only had he been raided at home, in bed, and frisked, but they gagged him too. It's a good thing the police officers didn't have to use their battering rams, which apparently they had, to break down the door to Bernard's terrace house in Richmond in Melbourne, because his fiancée, Emily Pallett, was up early in the morning of August 5, 2021 and kindly opened the door for the AFP. It's funny how the police never frisk anybody from the big end of town. They never gagged anybody from PwC for selling state secrets to foreign clients. They never frisked the bank chiefs in bed for their systemic banking frauds, which came out in the Royal Commission. It's funny how nobody at the big end of town ever seems to be raided at home by armed police officers. Back in 1772 BC, it was the sixth king of Babylon, Hammurabi, who declared the first duty of government is to protect the powerless from the powerful. But if you look at the experience of Gabriel Bernard, the government seems to think its first duty is to protect the powerful from the powerless. Bernard is a small-time share market analyst and a short seller. The market regulators don't like short sellers, who blew the whistle on what he thought were suspicious practices by the ASX-listed company Tyro Payments. But the attacks on the powerless are even more egregious by our government when you consider the persecution of Julian Assange, of tax office whistleblower Richard Boyle, and of course of the Afghan war crimes whistleblower David McBride, who faces court next week and a possible jail term of 50 years for doing the right thing. Now, we've been looking at audits and financial markets and beavering through financial statements for many, many years now and holding all these agencies and peak bodies to account. But we'd never heard of this thing called the Companies Auditors Disciplinary Board, which also gave testimony before the Senate last week. The primary duty of this very, very low-profile organisation is to prosecute wrongdoing by accountants, by auditors, the big four types such as PwC, EY, Deloitte and KPMG. In light of Bernard's testimony, it was intriguing to hear the testimony of the CABD operatives of this company's auditors disciplinary board, the watchdog for auditors, if you like. If operatives is actually the word, because there's not much going on in terms of operation. If you have a look, there's plenty of people that work for this thing. We've gone through their statutory statements. But if you have a look at this chart, at this table, you'll find very little happens at all. This is just 5 years. But you read it right. Nothing last year at all. Not one prosecution of an auditor. And it's not that they're doing the right thing en masse. There was only one, but that case was dismissed and withdrawn by ASIC. So delving back a bit further, we find that the Disciplinary Board has only prosecuted 25 cases since April 2008. That's a majestic strike rate of 1.5 cases or actions completed a year. Years go by, years roll on when nothing happens. 2016 to 18 were the lost years, and 2010 to 2013 were also the lost years where nothing in terms of activity was recorded by the company's disciplinary board. The big and singular enforcement action, and you'll love this, last year, no, it wasn't KPMG's massive audit cheating scandal or any of the big four scams exposed over the years by multinationals and their big four auditors in these pages. It was the prosecution of one Rocco Luciano Spagnolo, an auditor from Griffith in rural New South Wales, in respect of his audit work for an insurance broker in Merrijig in rural Victoria near Geelong. That was their singular action, their achievement for the year. There was, mind you, a flurry of activity in 2021 when no less than 9 auditor registrations were achieved, as well as 27 withdrawn by ASIC. It may be a coincidence that this incursion into the world of work by the company's Auditors Disciplinary Board followed the Senate inquiry into audit, which we described at the time as the most useless government inquiry in modern history. Nothing. Just a few pages of a report at the end of it which said nothing to see here. Of course, then we saw what happened with PwC a year or so after. Now, Rocco and his client, Rennie De Maria, may have been caught in the crosshairs of ASIC's hard-hitting company's Auditors Disciplinary Board, but they had the disadvantage of being small nobodies, not the big four. That is, not a Rupert Murdoch, a Pfizer, a Glencore, a Lend-Lease, a Goldman Sachs or an American Express. None of the biggies. Just a couple of blokes from the country getting up to shenanigans in the world of audit. We list in the story, which you'll find a link to on this video, some of our top 10. We call them the Dirty Dozen. Rupert Murdoch's News Corporation, Pfizer, American Express, these sort of ones. There's been many since. Lend-Lease, $1 billion tax scam there, whose auditor PwC merrily signed off on. There's a whole lot of abuses at the big end of town. Massive, continuing year after year. And nobody is watching. And certainly if the company's Auditors Disciplinary Board is watching, it's not doing anything. We've gone after all these people over the years, the AASB, the Financial Reporting Council, CANS, Chartered Accountants Australia New Zealand, the peak body, effectively a front for the big four, CPA, etc. Nobody is upholding standards. The standards are terrible. Massive audit frauds going on all over the place. And you can read our audit failures. Dozens of them. KPMG, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, PwC. What to do about it? Somehow, we're in a world now where the double standard prevails, where the powerless are being hit on by government and being enforced, and the powerful just get away with blue murder. Check it out on the website. Thank you very much for your support. We're going to keep bashing away at this stuff. It does sometimes have an effect in the end. Please like, comment, or share below.
Finally, I reported to ASIC and to the Australian markets that Tyro had bricked a large web of their payment terminals and had neglected to inform the market for several days, which led to several weeks. And my stories of dealing with ASIC is an extremely alarming one. On the morning of 5th of August 2021, 6 armed federal police officers wearing ballistics vests stormed my apartment. Had my fiancée not been leaving the apartment to go for a morning walk, and by chance opened the door and encountered the officers, I have no doubt they would have used a battering ram they carried to knock my door clean off its hinges. I was frisked despite still being in bed, and presented with a warrant which outlined I was being investigated for insider trading stocks of these companies. These companies were in the very same companies Viceroy's whistleblown on 2 regulators, including Wirecard, Grenke, and Tyro. In Tyro's case, Viceroy had directly whistleblown to ASIC. During the execution of the search warrants, ASIC explicitly searched for and purposely took copies of Viceroy's entire cloud drive and my personal computer, and my phones were also physically seized. With all of mine and Viceroy's information in their possession, ASIC chose to compel me to attend a compulsory Section 19 interview where I was forced to answer all questions put to me. Prior to the interview, I was also informed that this Section 19 interview carried a gag order of 12 months. Mere weeks after receiving my data and a forced Section 19 interview, ASIC sent a no further action letter to my lawyer. This was almost 2 years ago. My lawyer has for the last 2 years engaged in correspondence with ASIC to determine whether or not ASIC has destroyed all my data it took from my home in 2021, forcefully. This is despite me never being charged with any crime, nor being under any active investigation by ASIC. To conduct an armed raid on the homes of innocent financial analysts, market pundits, or whistleblowers who raise questions of financial market fraud is harassment. To place those innocent individuals under gag orders for long periods while playing ducks and drakes about whether ASIC retains private data which they seize during armed raids is an egregious abuse of power and clear evidence, I feel, of gross misjudgment or corruption in ASIC as its role as market regulator.